So today what we're going to be talking about is building an interface protocol for the neurodivergent life, and or excuse me, that's not the title of today's live. Today's live is New Year for Your Neurodivergent Relationship, and what I'm going to be talking about today are events that I host on our meetup group, but I'm also going to introduce you to a couple of other forums that you can use to, help you with your neurodivergent life. For example, there's the meetup group, and what we've got there are years and years of my experience helping people understand their neurodivergent life, but the meetup group is specific for the neurotypical. And by neurodivergent, what I mean is someone who's neurotypical, someone who's neurodiverse in a relationship that often feels like it's diverging or neurodivergent. So the meetup group is for neurotypicals. You have to be a member to attend events. You have a 30-day free trial to see if this is for you. And I put the link for the meetup group in the posted it in the summary of today's event, today's Facebook Live. So you can go to the meetup group and learn more about us. I offer video conferences, small group video conferences. I offer recorded teleconferences. They're live, recorded, and then you can listen to them again if you're a regular member. And there's also discussion forums where people can go in and chat with each other. That's all on Meetup. And then I also recently set up, like I said, the online course. It took me a year to develop the videos for this course, where I lay out everything about how to build an interface protocol between you and your neurodiverse loved one. And the course is just everything you ever thought you needed to know. Most people are starting to report it as it's kind of one of a kind. So I think it's going to be very helpful to you. If you take the course, then you are also automatically enrolled in our forum or our community, where you can go in and talk to other people taking the course, learn from each other, post your own observations. I also participate in that forum as well as the meetup forum. But the nice thing about the course forum is that it consists of both neurotypicals and neurodiverse folks. So we're having discussions that cross over that divide, and that's a big deal. That's kind of a one of a kind. So I hope you participate in that. And make sure you let me know that you're here. All you have to do is post a little comment in the comment section that you're alive and joining me. Let's see here. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So today, and I post in the open. Hi, Donna. Good. I finally am getting people to say they're here. Sometimes I don't notice the numbers because they give me the numbers down on one side of the screen, the videos over here, and the comment sections over here. It's a little disconcerting. At any rate, I've got the link for joining Meetup and the link for the course on the comment section, and then you'll hopefully soon can order my book online from Amazon. Okay. The theme for January really is, in a way, like I said, building an interface protocol for your neurodivergent life. This is the title of the free webinar that I offer for people who are taking my course. There is a fee for taking the course. It's not free, but every month I'll host a free webinar where you can come with your partners and talk about things that you're learning in the course, or ask questions and learn from each other. That's what we also do in the forum. You go in the forum and you talk to each other and post things, and I think this is what we need, don't we? We need to be able to talk to each other and learn from each other. So that webinar is coming up. I don't have the date on here, unfortunately, but it's in January as well. It looks like it didn't get put on the reminder sheet for me, so, but if you join the course, you will know when the webinar is. Actually, it's also posted on the Meetup calendar. So if you're both Meetup members and a member of the course and the course community, you should find the date on the Meetup calendar. Okay. Let's start with what the conferences are about on Meetup. Because since this is about, this month is about how to cross the divide in the relationship. I thought that these topics would be very, very helpful, and they're drawn from my book and from the course too, but we've been working on these subjects for a long time. And by the way, if you have comments or questions, go ahead and please put them in the comment section. I'm happy to answer them throughout this presentation. So the first conference that I'm offering is a video conference. The title is Free Yourself from Blame and Shame. That'll be on Tuesday, January 3rd and Wednesday, January 4th. Don't worry about keeping track of these dates. They're posted on the events calendar on Meetup. They're posted on my website. They're posted here on Facebook, so you can find out when these events are. Free yourself from blame and shame. Part of the problem of neurodivergent relationships is that people on the spectrum and neurodiverse people rub each other the wrong, neurodiverse people and neurotypical rub each other the wrong way because we're using different methods for communicating. Neurodiverse people are talking about the topic or the words. Neurotypical people are talking to the person. And I can go into depth about that at our conferences and more if you have questions about it. But here's the thing. It's easy when we're angry to go to shaming or blaming. So the goal is to step out of that angry spot and realize that the reason we're stuck is that we've just got a neurodivergent moment going on. So that's the first conference. The second conference is Planning for the Year Ahead as a Neurotypical Partner. Planning for the Year Ahead as a Neurotypical Partner. That's on January 10th and January 11th. And the reason it's for the neurotypical is because the Meetup group is for the neurotypical. So as a neurotypical, what you have to focus on is how do I take care of myself given that I feel thwarted over and over again trying to communicate with my neurodiverse loved one. That feeling of not being able to break through is so frustrating that sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. So I think part of planning for the year ahead as a neurotypical is to take care of your need for neurotypical interaction. So a lot of what we talk about in this video conference will be things like taking time for yourself, hanging out with more friends, doing things that don't require crossing over that neurodivergent divide. Then you've got the energy and the resilience to move ahead with building an interface protocol. The teleconference is different than the video conferences. I offer a free teleconference to all Meetup members, even those who are in their initial 30-day trial period. You get 30 days to see if you want to stay in the group, and after that then you pay an annual fee of $25 and you can attend events. But the free teleconference is to stay or to leave your neurodivergent relationship. Now this sounds pretty negative, but the reason, and as many people as want to can sign up for the teleconference. I just talk on that subject and then I open it up for Q&A, so we have some people who can ask questions, and that's a good thing. Please go ahead and put your questions in the comments section too, by the way, because I'm happy to answer what I can today on this short live. But it sounds negative to stay or to leave your neurodivergent relationship. That's a normal reaction from both neurodiverse people and neurotypicals. It's a normal reaction to get so frustrated that you're trying to decide, how do I get away from this unpleasant sensation that it's going nowhere, that I'm not being heard, that I'm not being validated, appreciated, understood, loved. It's normal to come down to this black and white question: should I stay or leave? So at the conference and the teleconference, I want to kind of expand the problem solving to go beyond just do I stay or leave? And because it's an unsatisfactory answer, isn't it? Yes or no? It's unsatisfactory. And then the last video conference of the month of January is on the 18th and the 17th and 18th, it looks like. Looks like we got the dates backwards. But at any rate, it's called Anxiety, Meltdowns, and the Silent Treatment. So again, the reason, what does that have to do with relationships? Well, when neurodiverse people have, they do have a lot of anxiety, they often have meltdowns, or they just pull away, that leaves the relationship hanging there. It means that neurotypicals don't have anyone to talk with to solve the problem. And our method for problem solving is interactional. We reach out to others and we try to come up with a solution with that person. So when the neurodiverse person has escalated to a place where they just can't take the stress, we have no one to work it out with. All right? So in this video conference, we're going to look at, it's again, this is a video conference for neurotypicals only. So what we're looking at is how to take care of ourselves, given that there is this escalation, and how to give the neurodiverse person time to wind down, think it through, come up with an answer, or maybe a little bit later, but at least come back and then talk. They have to calm down first, otherwise talking about it probably just isn't going to do any good. I'm clicking off some things here that are in the way. There we go. Okay. The last thing I want you to know about events for Meetup is that if there's an event that's sold out in the month of January and you particularly wanted to attend it, you leave a note on that event page that we'd like that event repeated, because I always have a special bonus event towards the end of the month for anything that just didn't get taken care of. I want to make sure we have a little extra time for that. And inevitably the bonus event does get filled with the next the topic that's important to people. So you don't have to miss out, but I would suggest that you sign up for events in advance, because that way you don't miss them. Now, I also want to remind you that our ambassador, Julie Rowlands, is in New Zealand, and she's wonderful. What she does is she hosts a Zoom conference, a free Zoom call for all new members, at least once a month. She's hosting that. And what Julie does is kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of how to navigate this complex system we've got going. We've got, like I said, video conferences, teleconferences, forums, chats, and then we've just introduced this new online course and a separate forum for couples. So there's a lot to have to think about in order to educate yourself about how to make your relationships work better. I'm hoping that we're not having too much trouble watching this live. I keep getting messages that things are not working very well, and I'm hearing I don't see any comments from people. Can you let me know if you can hear me and see me, because normally by now people are asking questions. I don't see anything except for one person. So hopefully it's working. If it's not, I don't know what to tell you. I'm hoping that when we are recording this, so usually the recording works and you can see it it'll be posted here on Facebook and YouTube. We also oh good, the messages are there. I just didn't see them. Okay, good. Thanks, Louise and Melina. I guess I just didn't scroll down far enough. Reagan, oh, good. Okay, all right. Thank you. I guess I just needed to scroll and make sure people were there. If you have a question, make sure you leave a question for me. I'm happy to answer it. So, back to building an interface protocol for the neurodivergent life. This is one conference that's a free webinar for people who are taking my online course. But I don't want you to miss out on this idea as well, because when you read my book, you'll learn about the interface protocol, the 7-step interface protocol. And nobody's really explained this before. So I think it's really important that you understand that you don't just have to be frustrated. You don't have to just be saying, should I stay or leave? Or should I kick the other person out? You don't have to go there. You don't have to go for that, such a negative outcome. The reason we're distressed is because we're being pushed to look for a new way of communicating with this other person that we haven't tried before. Neurotypicals keep trying their usual interactional, more intuitive, empathic system, and neurodiverse people continue to try their more transactional, nuts and bolts, black and white system, and those two systems are totally opposite of each other. They can work together. We can be transactional, we can be interactional, but if one person is being interactional and the other is being transactional, it feels like a war's going on. So, Melina has asked a good question. She says, does ASD, whoops, I lost it here. Does ASD affect memory? He's always been terrible about remembering things, and it's getting worse and worse, quite alarming, because they're important things that I told him just yesterday sometimes. This is excellent because we talk about this in the course and in my book. And I've recently published a blog on this called The Big Mistake, so look it up. In The Big Mistake, I talk about that there's another, and a couple of other blogs. That's not the only one. People on the spectrum store their memories transactionally. They store their memories according to what's called semantic memory. So they store them according to the facts and figures, the data set, the agenda. They don't store their memories according to the person they're sharing it with. Neurotypicals store their memories according to the people that they shared the experience with. And so what neurotypicals have is what's called an episodic memory. Now, people can do both. Okay, you can have semantic memory and episodic memory, but neurotypicals lean towards episodic memories, which is why we remember what somebody told us. Neurotypical are remembering the words the person told them or the facts, but not the person, and therefore it becomes a discrete element in their memory system as opposed to something belonging to the interaction. And that's the best I can explain on this little short Facebook Live, but it is true that people on the spectrum will score with a deficiency in episodic memory, meaning they're not going to remember that you told them something. They're trying to remember what you told them. And I think it's very useful for neurotypicals to understand that we remember things according to the interaction, not so much the exact words. So we could talk a lot about that one. Linda says, hi, Dr. Kathy. I am new at this, trying to figure out my ND husband of 39 years. Yeah, he's very critical, defensive, very competitive. It seems I can't do anything right, can't even put silverware away. Right? I can't trust him because he's always doing what he wants, not what we have agreed upon. It is exhausting. Yes, and she said, is this part of it? Yes, this is part of it. If you think about the transactional approach, your transactional spouse is focusing on the transaction. It's yes or no, it's right or wrong. It's what works for him, not what works for us. The interactional neurotypical is trying to figure out what's going to work for us as the interaction. So trying to remember the us is hard. Trying to make a decision about what to do, how to stay out of the argument. Very frequently the exhausting feature is because the neurotypical is trying to understand, what do I need to say so he or she will remember what we talked about, because often the very next day they say, I don't remember talking about that at all. And so there are things you can do. You know, your neurodiverse spouse needs to be in therapy for sure, and learn techniques like how to take notes, how to record things, how to slow themselves down and try to put into episodic memory that they were just talking to you. And I talk about this kind of stuff at our video conferences and at in the webinar for the course. We talk about this quite a bit. So when you think you've agreed upon something, if you're neurotypical, if you think you've agreed upon something, maybe I'd put it in writing, because then you've got it to refer to later. If you neurodiverse folks thinks you have an agreement because your neurotypical said sure, they might have been saying sure to, let's talk about this some more. As a neurodiverse person, you may think they've actually agreed to something that you put in a yes or no format, when the neurotypical might just be saying, that's a good idea, that's interesting, let's talk more about it. Only they don't always say that. Okay, so then let's see. So hang in there, Linda. What you're going to find out is that you're not alone. Other people do understand what you're going through. There's probably lots of people saying, oh yeah, it's exhausting. You're not the only one. And the criticalness. Oh, I wanted to talk about that Linda mentioned, the criticalness. People on the spectrum, because they sort everything transactionally according to data sets, they don't often understand that they're pointing out something negative. They're just pointing out something. Whereas for neurotypicals, we don't point things out that might hurt somebody's feelings unless we intend to. We're trying to sort for what would work to resolve the problem, as opposed to you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense to you. So there's another piece about this. People on the spectrum have what's called context blindness. So they can see all this information that's going on between people in the context, but they tend to sort it into categories as opposed to its interactional context. I explain this in the course and in my book, both. Let's see here. I know there was another question down here. Hi, Amanda. Oh, she says the question about ASD affecting memory is interesting to me as well. I left my undiagnosed husband in 2017. His memory loss, I believe, is coming from the stress of living undiagnosed. Could that be possible? Maybe. Because as people age, we don't do as well. But I think mostly what it is if the person has been relying on that transactional semantic memory for a lifetime, they've kind of developed a lot of rigidity, and they're not going to easily move over to a more, episodic or interactional approach. And I hate to say this, but, we all have come up with our belief systems about the way it is in the world, and so we kind of stick with that. And it's possible that the anger and the hurt of not being able to communicate with you has left your spouse with the idea that they're right and you're wrong, and we're just going to leave it that way. And that's a tragedy, isn't it? Because then you don't get to resolve anything. And she says, being competitive, Amanda goes on, being competitive, absolutely, because when I left the husband, my best friend said, well, good, your daughter won't have to choose her favorite parent anymore. I figured out I was in competition with him about being the favorite, or him being the favorite. When I got sick, he told me he did my job better. Well, okay, I think this is a little convoluted, Amanda, but I think here's my take on this. You got competitive because your spouse is transactional, and transactional people pull that out of us. The transactional person is highly competitive. Things are right or wrong. They want to prove that you're wrong and they're right. Or if they're wrong, maybe the conversation is over. As opposed to, let's work toward a win-win solution, right? Neurotypicals are looking for, how can we make this work for everybody? If you get pulled into their transactional world, you will be competitive. You will try to prove you're right, or you'll give up, too. Or the children will try to prove they're right. And so a parent has to be good, a parent has to be bad, as opposed to, there's a whole variety going on here. So I always advise people to stop the transactional stuff when it's not necessary. And I understand that people on the spectrum will, people on the spectrum will push toward a finite answer because that's the world they understand. But I think you can say to them politely, there isn't one way to do this, and each of us as parents have gifts to offer our children. Let's leave it at that. And then in therapy, they can get some help with that. Oh, and Amanda's saying, is there any way to see the answers to these questions when we're done? I usually answer some people, I usually go back and answer some of these questions online when the live is finished. So I'll attempt to do that, but I don't have a lot of time for that. The best you can do is listen to the recording afterwards. And like I said, it's going to be posted on YouTube and on Facebook, so you can listen again. And I'm fine if you want to post a question to me on Messenger here on Facebook. I'll answer those questions too. So it looks like we've got kind of a small group today, which is fine. But again, make comments and let me know if you have questions about what I'm talking about. I think I'll take a second and talk about the difference between transactional and interactional, just so that, because this is probably the biggest concept that will help you make sense of your relationship. One of the reasons that interactional people and transactional people have such a struggle is that if you don't understand that's what's going on, you can't address it. So the interactional person will frequently say, I just want to talk. Or, I just want to improve our connection. And that means nothing to a transactional person. What do you mean you want to talk? What do you want to talk about? The transactional person needs an agenda. What are we talking about? What's the point of the conversation? For the neurotypical, the point is conversation. The neurotypical trusts that if we have an interactive dialogue, out of that we will connect. Out of that we will grow closer. We will feel love. They trust that. The solution to whatever the problem is will come as a result of interacting. For the transactional person, they're waiting for you to give them direction, an answer, a solution, and often they will get up and walk out of the room if you don't get more transactional. So here's what I suggest. Because, of course, your transactional neurodiverse loved one loves you, and they don't want to offend you, but it's hard to track all that stuff that neurotypicals are saying as an attempt to have an interaction. So what I suggest for neurotypicals is to say, when I'm saying I want a conversation with you, I'm really just throwing some ideas out. Give me a moment to throw a few ideas out, and as soon as I know exactly which one I want an answer from, I'll let you know. Okay? for you transactional people, please be polite. Don't press them for an answer right away. Say, I know you need, this is a transactional person, I know you need to talk about a lot of things before you tell me the point, but it would really help me if you could get to the point. You know, try to be polite about it, because the neurotypical can't get to the point right off the bat. A lot of times they need to make sure you want to hear it. And for transactional people, you neurodiverse people, it's kind of hard to know if you want to hear their point until you hear their point. But what they want to know is, do you want to hear me? Do you want to notice me? Do you want to affirm the person who's talking to you? That's what they're doing. That's what neurotypicals are doing. I hope this helps a little bit. So Sabrina says, my partner will say it's hard for him when I just launch into something. He would get lost in what I'm saying. I need to keep it short and sweet, or give him some idea of the point for sure. Right. We don't launch into the topic. We launch into connecting. We're throwing out little bids for connection, for affirmation, for notice me, I'm noticing you. That's what we're doing at first when we begin. And in fact, if you look at this live, I always start the live by chatting a little bit and inviting people to join and bringing up a subject that I'm going to talk about, but then I wander off a little bit as people join the group. Because even though you're not sitting in this room with me, I know you're there, and I keep wanting to connect with you. I want to see someone, like Sabrina sent me a smiley face, right? Or somebody else sent me a handshake, or a wave. And these are ways that we let the other person know that we are having fun with them, or we want to connect with them. So the number one question, or the number one comment that I get from neurotypicals who are interactive is, I want help improving my connection with my neurodiverse loved one. I want help with connection. That's interaction. What do neurodiverse people ask me for? It's really interesting. 9 times out of 10 they say, I want my neurotypical loved one to be nice to me. Neurotypicals want connection. Neurodiverse wants you to be nice. Being nice is a transaction. Connection is an interaction. So, what do you do to build the interface protocol here? Oh, thank you, Sabrina. I love that when you chat with us. Yeah, I mean, that's what we like. We want to be chatted with. And through the chatting, by the way, we actually do learn things about the other person. You learn things about me as I'm chatting, right? You learn things about the subject that's important to me, like about memory. We talked about that. You learn something. I have fun talking about those things. And the interface protocol requires this. So what it requires is that both parties be resilient. You just can't give up. You got to hang in there and say, I'm worth it. I'm not going to be put off because this other person's annoyed with me. The other thing is that those of you who understand what empathy is, which is our neurotypical population, you need to stay in that empathy space. You need to stay with that you are sensitive. You can figure out what's going on with the other. You can understand the transactional nature of your partner. You can do this. The transactional person has trouble with empathy. That doesn't mean they're not sensitive or compassionate or kind, but they have trouble reading between the lines, which is empathy. And so if the transactional person can be resilient and believe that the empathy triad is in play, then you can do it. We need to accept the third step of the interface protocol is accepting that autism spectrum disorder is a diagnosis, that there is somebody in the family who's on the spectrum, and the person both with the diagnosis and the person living with the person with the diagnosis, whether they're formally diagnosed or not, we need to accept this is true, because otherwise you can't deal with this transactional, interactional stuff. You keep functioning as if, neurotypicals keep functioning as if their neurodiverse loved one can operate interactionally at will, and they cannot. It's too hard. Yes, Sabrina, that's sweet. My partner will lose hope if he feels that I'm not happy with him. He needs to hear from me that I know he is trying, and also for me to be kind. Right. Would you just be nice to me? So I think we can do that. I think we can be kind. It's still frustrating for neurotypicals, though, that the neurodiverse person isn't quite connecting with where we're coming from. That's another expression that neurotypicals say a lot. I just want him or her to understand where I'm coming from. I want you to understand that. If you want somebody to understand where you're coming from, that means they have to be able to step into your reality and have empathy for you. They have to be able to understand why you put the world together the way you do. That might be hard for people on the spectrum unless their neurotypical loved one explains it. So you have to slow down and explain where you're coming from. Still doesn't mean that they're going to give you room to do it, but you can give it a shot. So, back to this description of things. Once you have resilience, once you are fully utilizing the empathy triad is empathy, context, and conversation. That conversation keeps bringing it back to, are we on the same page? Do we understand each other? Okay, are we together? Then you move on to the other steps in the interface protocol until you have a way to get past just transactional and just interactional. And a lot of times what happens is that you just go, you know what, I don't know what just happened, but I still love you, you're wonderful, and let's try again tomorrow. Because it's tough getting through each step of the interface protocol. It's really tough. Yes, Sabrina says, I felt very alone and unseen a lot before understanding exactly who her partner is, understanding that transactional stuff. Here's the mistake that neurotypicals make. You're still going to feel alone, Sabrina. The more you understand him, the less he will be defensive and critical. But that doesn't mean he will get where you're coming from. It might reduce his anxiety that you're no longer moving along at lightning speed, but that doesn't mean he's going to get you the way neurotypicals want to be understood. Okay? But the fact that he tries feels good. And here's a tip for you neurodiverse people. Even if you can't keep up at lightning speed with whatever the chit-chat's about, you can make notes. Write things down, think about it, go away, write yourself an email, think about what your spouse just said and did and what they might mean, because you know a lot about that person, you just aren't integrating it in the moment. And even if it's 20 minutes later or 2 days later or 2 weeks later, if you neurodiverse folks go back to your neurotypical and say, you know, that conversation we had last week, I realized, I made a few notes about it, and I realized this is what you were talking about, am I right? And 9 times out of 10 you will be right, okay, because you've been able to dig down into your memory banks and pull stuff up, but you just can't do it quickly. And this is what's confusing. Somebody was mentioning this today, by the way. I'll throw this out and then we probably got to wind things up. The idea is, how come people on the spectrum can be so quick, so brilliant about their chosen special interest, their career, or some problem solving that does not involve people, interactive stuff. And how can they be so quick at that and not get what's going on here? And that's because if you lean transactional, if you tend to use mostly a transactional system for pulling up memories and solving problems, you can kind of think like a computer, sort of ones and zeros, click, 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 click. You can click along on that stuff. But if you have to make a switch to the interactional stuff, you're going to be over here still in your transactional mode, and it takes a while to get over to interactional for neurodiverse people. Whereas what neurotypicals are doing is going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're interactive, and then you're transactional. And you'll even see this on this live today. As I answer a question, work that one out, then go back and pick up the piece I was talking about. Sometimes I forget what I was talking about, but none of you are going to care very much because it all applies. Or if I forget, you'll remind me. You'll post another question in here, right? So, yes, Sabrina says, again, I'm working on accepting that part that I won't get a neurotypical, easy, comfortable, empathy triad, sensitive approach. But if my partner continues to try, then it works better for the couple. If you forgive each other and forgive yourself, how many of you in this room get so angry because you can't get to the point you're trying to get to? You can't get a connection that you're after, or you're mad at the other person for, interrupting you and moving on too quickly. If we can get the anger out of the way, if we can take breaks, that's another part of the 7-step interface protocol, is take breaks so that you don't fall apart, and then come back to it. That's love, right? That's a loving interaction. That's showing the other person that you're not giving up on them, and you hope they don't give up on you. So, anybody else in the room have something they want to ask me? Because I'm still here. Okay, one of the things that I'll sort of end on then is that I want to remind people, if you join our meetup group, and I hope you do, each conference is unique, frankly. Even if there's a topic, we often will veer off the topic simply because the topic is all about the interaction or the neurodivergent relationship. It doesn't matter if we're talking about anger or stress management, or there's a variety of different topics. What we're talking about is how you work it through in a neurodivergent household. And I always like to remind people that I grew up with an autistic parent, my mother. I married an autistic man, and I adopted an autistic daughter. So I have been surrounded my entire life by neurodivergence. I just didn't know that. It took me a long time to figure it out. So let's see here. Barbara. She says, married 46 years to a man who does not show empathy, no emotional reciprocity, and no affection. His silence is ghostly. He recently moved out a week after our 46th anniversary because he can't stand my reaction to his disconnect. Yes, see, this is the tragedy of not realizing that there's the transactional person is not picking up on the neurotypical cues, and the neurotypical doesn't know that. They both don't know it. And then this sort of flat effect that you see with people on the spectrum is what carries the day. That's the transactional stuff. Don't allow that to carry the day. And then Linda says, my husband was bulimic in college and has an addictive personality. Is this part of it? Yes, Linda, it's very much part of it. What we often will see is that in families where there's autism, there's often bulimia in either the autistic person or somebody else in the family. And there's probably quite a bit of overlap. And it's not necessarily an addictive personality. We really do think it's DNA. So there's a lot to be researched about that. That's not my special area of expertise, but you're absolutely right. It's part of the anxiety disorders. It's part of the obsessive compulsiveness that we see in autism spectrum disorders. And it's a lot of work to conquer. So by the time most of us have met our autistic partners, they've been through a lot. That's what's important to understand. They've been through a lot of adapting in order to cope with many of the issues that they've got to deal with. So it makes sense that they really rely on that transactional stuff. Okay, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to wrap it up. And this recording is available immediately on Facebook, so you can go back in and listen to it. Make sure that you do take a look at the course. Just at least go look at the intro, because I think you're going to have so many answers to your questions. I answer all the questions you could possibly answer in my recorded course. The other thing is, I do hope you take advantage of the book that is coming out soon, because I've got charts in there, I've got graphs, and not boring stuff, not academic stuff, stuff that you can use to guide you in your communication, because that's what we need. We need tools that guide you. You're welcome, Reagan. Thank you. All right, take care, everybody. We'll talk again soon, I hope.